audience. Welcome to Trunk Club in Washington, D.C. I'm Kit Warchol. I am the head of content for Career Contessa. For those of you who don't know us, which I hope you all do, we are a career advice site specifically for women. We do that through a variety of ways, including advice articles, interviews. We also do e-courses and, of course, things like live events. And we're here with Trunk Club, one of our favorite partners. For those of you who aren't familiar with Trunk Club, they essentially help you look as powerful as you feel inside. And that is why tonight we are here to talk about leadership. So welcome. I do want to do a couple of housekeeping items before we get started, and I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. But there are a couple of things that you need to know. So for those of you that are just coming in or kind of snuck past, I know it was a little confusing at check-in, does everyone have one of these lovely, with the quotes on the back? Everyone? So in the event that you don't, you can head back over to the check-in table to get one because it actually matters for the next portion of our evening, which is the curated networking portion of our evening. I'm going to go over that after we finish our panel, but that's just an FYI to you. So if you don't have one, go speak to Jack. She's very friendly and happy to oblige. And then the only other housekeeping item is that we will essentially be doing a short panel where I'm going to ask some questions that we prepared in advance, and then there will be a lot of time for you to do your own questions. So hold your questions until the end, and if you have a question for one or all of our panelists, I will find a way to kind of single you out so that you can stand up and, again, use your diaphragm to ask that question. So thanks for bearing with us on that. And without further ado, let's get into this panel. So we're here tonight to talk about women who mean business, and I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves and what they do. And I thought it would be kind of fun to get us started if each of you could talk about your first leadership experience and let us know whether you actually felt ready for it when the time came. So should we start with you?
Sure. My name's Tessa Wolf, and I am the creative director at a company called Framebridge, which is a startup based in DC. We do online custom framing and do all manufacturing and fulfillment out of our factory in Kentucky. And let's see, my first leadership experience, I was a YMCA gymnastics instructor at age 14. I was certainly not ready or trained. It was fun.
Hi, my name is Shelva Clemons. I am Senior Director of Marketing and Communications for a nonprofit here in DC. It's called National Children's Center. I'm also an adjunct professor at Georgetown University, and I also freelance on the side. I would say for me, first leadership role, I think back to when I was in the insurance industry and I went into management, a management role. Was I ready for it? I thought I was, because I thought I was managing getting the work done, but I quickly found out that I was managing and leading the people that needed to get the work done. So it was a training ground for me, to say the least. It was definitely an unexpected experience, I'll say.
Hi everyone, my name is Renee DeSilva. I am a recovering sales professional who's now head of talent at a company called EAB, used to be the Education Advisory Board. We are hiring, by the way, also. And I would say, like, my first real leadership opportunity was when I was really good at selling individually, and I was asked to manage a team of people, and I was an absolute train wreck. And I'm surprised that they let me continue to manage. We can talk more about that at some point tonight.
Hi everyone, Lauren Epshteyn. I am in ad sales at Google, and we do have a relatively small DC presence here, and we are also hiring for account managers. So if any of you are in digital media looking for a new account management position, I would be happy to put your resume in. Just come find me after the panel. My first leadership experience, I was student body president of my high school, and while I felt ready for it, I also say I did make at least one mistake. I allowed my best friend at the time to be asked to homecoming in front of the whole high school. I orchestrated it and let it happen on my watch, like in front of everyone during my time of, on the stage. And so I was suspended for 1 week.
Hi everyone, my name is McGoodwin. I promise we didn't put two Laurens next to each other to confuse you, but I'm the founder and CEO of Career Contessa, which I'm sure many of you already know,
obviously we kind of talked about along the way back of your leadership experiences. So my next question is, how would each of you describe your leadership style today, and how would you say it's evolved? A couple of you mentioned some mistakes that you made, so how much has your leadership style changed, and where are you today?
Yeah.
As a leader, I think I'm really hands-off. I'm very casual about management. I know that's not what everyone likes, and someone told me once, you tend to manage the way you like to be managed, so I think maybe I want people to leave me alone when I'm doing work. But yeah, I think as I've grown in my career, I've realized that some people are not like me, and some people want more. And so really being there to sort of support them and actually be an advocate for them is something that I had to learn, sort of inside the organization, outside the organization. Personally, I want to make sure that as a manager, I'm not just there to look at their work, but I'm really there to make sure they're growing in their careers and they're sort of growing up with the company. And so that was a big part I didn't know was part of the job, I guess. And that's kind of where I am now.
Would you say that's the way that
Would you say that's a way that helps you build trust with your team? Yeah.
Yeah, I think my team, for better or worse, really doesn't seem to be afraid to ask me for anything or, about anything. And I think that that's really good. I like knowing what we can do to support them. And if there's a skill they want to learn and they don't yet know it, like how we can figure that out. And so, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I would say that my leadership style is I'm a nurturer. I definitely want to help people grow with their careers. With that being said, I am not a micromanager because I don't like to be micromanaged. Whether or not my style has evolved, I think what's happened is that it's altered depending on the people I'm managing, depending on what they need, depending on what I need from them. I found, and that was a part of the mistake that I had with one of the first people I was managing, is that I made an assumption based off of a resume and a LinkedIn profile, but once I got to actually interact with that person, it was a little bit different than what I assumed. So I had to adjust my management style to make sure that I could get from that individual what I needed.
Yeah, I guess I would say if you're not evolving, you're probably doing something wrong, right? So I think my style tends to be very direct, and what's good about that is you always know where you stand. What's bad about that is I can sometimes deliver feedback in a way that can be difficult to understand or to sort of receive. And so what I really tried to do is this distinction between management and leadership. And when you have, if you're managing, is you have a couple of people that maybe you're guiding their work. As you step into bigger, you're managing departments or teams of teams, you recognize that what it took to be successful when you had a couple of people under your management is very different as your breadth grows. And in some ways, the more senior you become, the more you need to modulate your approach and adjust your style to the needs of the people in front of you. So I hope that my team now would say that I'm more of a clearing of obstacles. I develop and groom them and get them ready for the next thing. But that's taken me some evolution, for sure.
And to me, leadership is about keeping your team or your people informed and empowered. So one example right now, I lead a team of about 10 people, and our org is going through some transition. My number one priority is to keep them in the loop and to have as much information as I have, because I know that can create angst when your manager, your boss knows something you don't know about change in the organization. So it's been a priority to lead through keeping people informed and empowered.
I mean, everybody's made really great points. I'm fortunate. I have a really small team, and there's no overhead above me. So I would say right now, at our size, my leadership style is very collaborative. I always want to get in a room with somebody and brainstorm on how we're going to get, if this is our goal, how can we work backwards from there, without trying to micromanage. And I truly believe that one of the best things managers and leaders can do is hire really smart people and get out of their way, and let them have their voice and their perspective, and especially when you are trying to, you have a challenge and you're trying to come to the solution for that. So I try to always have it be collaborative, and I hope it's not micromanaging, because I do think a lot of micromanagers are like, I'm so collaborative. You're like, no, that's not
Should we just ask it?
Well, no, I can confirm that. I'm also really flattered that I'm a smart person that you hired for your team. I hope I'm living up to it. So I think that a couple of people mentioned again mistakes and missteps, and I do think that that's often something that we don't talk about enough. And especially, I don't even mean early on in our careers. We all make mistakes, but do any of you have an experience, even recently, where you've made a mistake or misstep with your team or as a leader that you learned from, and what did you learn from that specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I make them every day. So for me, part of it has been I've moved roles and functions, and I've also gone from kind of a middle management to an executive level position, and so I literally feel like I'm like stepping on landmines as I go. I think a lot of it comes down to not being tuned in enough with like the person sitting across from me or the people sitting across from me. Like, what are the me-centered issues? Like, I'm thinking macro, and they're thinking like, how does this one change impact how I get my work done? And you get so busy and you're trying to move through things so quickly that you end up in some ways causing more angst, and it sounds like your advice is great, like just taking the time to slow down and to process and to make sure that you are just being really mindful of the context around you. And the other thing is just recognizing when you maybe have gotten to a point where you need to ask for help. Like, I think as women generally, we tend to want to get it all done and don't sometimes recognize when it's time to just say, you know what, like I maybe need to take a step back and let others maybe lean in more, or just really being willing to try different things. So I just feel like I'm just trying to lean into that, like being okay with taking risks, being okay being ahead of my skis, and then just hopefully if I can be vulnerable with my team and saying like, you know what, I really didn't get that right, that it kind of creates a place where everyone else is willing to as well.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. One thing I tell my mentees, both through the Mentor for Hire program that Contessa does, and also through some of the nonprofit mentoring that I do, is it's not how quickly or deeply you get dragged down into the mud, it's how gracefully you dance out of it. And I had learned that firsthand early in my career at Google. I was an account manager, and multiple times I have offered to quit. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't believe that went so wrong. And my manager at the time was like, oh, quit, just fix it. And that's such good advice, right? It's like you don't need to walk away from your problems. You need to gracefully dance out of the, the muck that you got dragged into. So yeah, that's my advice for when mistakes do happen. Just learn from them and fix the problem and move on.
I have a mistake that I made a lot. Oh, sure. So this is actually one I just very recently learned, and I sort of figured this out from talking to my much younger sister. She's 26 and lives in Atlanta, and she's awesome. But she told me something about her, she had a manager or an experience where this had happened to her, and it was the worst thing that she could imagine. I realized I'm doing it all the time, which is, I always, my instinct is that as a manager for our team, my job is to sort of protect us and make sure that, our work meets the needs of, the stakeholders, and that everyone's really happy with the outcome of the work. That is definitely true. But also, what I realized I was doing is I was sort of taking over projects at the very end in order to get them out the door or make the final tweaks and changes, and I realized, only from my sister telling me how bad an experience that is, that it's really unfair. The worst thing you can do is take a project from someone who's been working really hard on it, and not let them take it all the way to the end, even if it means them staying up till the middle of the night and going back to it over and over and over again. But now I'm really glad I know that, and I think I'm making progress on not editing other people's things.
Okay, so I also got a notification from my good coworker Aaliyah here that some people are having a hard time hearing the back, so I'm going to do a little bit of a shuffle with this microphone, if that helps. Is that going to help back there? Okay, perfect. So I'm also going to do a little shuffle with the conversation, and we actually were touching on this. I know that was like a good transition. We were touching on this a couple of minutes ago in talking about sort of what the idea of risk and feeling like you want to be confident to take risks, and that you want to show your team that that's something that they can do as well. So I'd love to, especially since I know at least a couple of you are hiring at your current companies, I'd love to hear from you what it is that you look for in a team, and in particular the kinds of women that you are looking to hire that you know will ultimately make good leaders within your company. So does anyone have like an immediate response to that?
So generally, our firm's talent or hiring philosophy is that we don't actually hire for subject matter expertise. We hire for aptitude and attitude and people who are just really driven. And so I do think that opens up the aperture for a lot of folks, especially if you're looking to change careers or do something different. So that's how we try to think about talent. I think on what do I look for in leaders specifically, I think this notion of self-awareness is really important. So it's okay if you should know things about yourself. You should know two things. You should know, what do you do better than most people? And it does not have to be something like super sexy. Like, I'm a really good project manager. I can just get stuff done. That's valuable. It's not like the most sexy skill ever. But if I take on things that really maximize that, I think that helps me. So I look for people who are really clear and self-aware on what they are really good at and are willing to bring that to the company. And then the flip side is that people who can take feedback. Like, if you talk about the gap in leadership between men and women, there's articles on this. A lot of that is driven by the fact that women tend to get less critical feedback. And so you walk around with blind spots, you don't know what you're good at, you don't know what's holding you back. And so for me, I love people who are clear on what they're good at and who are willing to take really constructive feedback on what they're not great at and be willing to run at that. So that's probably what I would say from my perspective. So,
Well, actually, that's another good question, which is, we know that the leadership gap exists, and several of you are working in fields that are male-dominated, and some of you are not. So have you had any particular experiences beyond that where you feel like there are ways that women can help each other in terms of improving? Obviously, there are things that need to be changed beyond ourselves and beyond women and what they do for each other, but what are some ways that you think women can lift each other up, especially to kind of offset that leadership gap?
So going back to my experience working in corporate, I've worked in the insurance industry, financial services, and automotive industry. And one thing that I quickly learned is the difference between mentors and sponsors. And what I quickly learned is that mentor is that person you can talk to and be very personal with them about questions you may have, what's going on in the company, or how you're managing your personal career. The sponsor, and actually this is something that I learned from men, is that person in the organization that, for lack of a better term, will ride or die for you. That person who is willing to say, if I'm going to get promoted, I want Shelva on my team, she's going to get it done. That's not necessarily someone that I may kumbaya with after work, but this is someone who is very familiar with my work ethic. And I personally feel like in the industries that I worked in, I saw a lot of sponsorships going on that helped a lot of individuals move up in their career. I think that's an area of opportunity for women to really take that seriously, the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, and also taking the initiative to seek out that person to be your sponsor.
That's great. You actually have a more of like a women-focused experience, right?
Yes, I feel I'm very lucky in this arena, so I realized. Oh yeah.
Sorry. So I just actually was tossing this to her because you have an experience of working in a sort of female-dominated world. So do you want to talk a little bit about what your experiences are? Do you feel like it's different, I guess, to work with women? You do, yeah.
So again, I know this is not the norm, so I feel really lucky about it. But yeah, our company is primarily, made up of a group of female leaders. Our founder and CEO is a woman, and many of the folks that she's hired into leadership positions are also women. We are a manufacturing company, and our COO is a woman. We have a lot of men in leadership positions as well who report into women, and so it's really just, it's a different environment than I've worked in before. And I'll tell you, I love it, but I think that a big thing that is a big difference really is there's sort of a different sense of honesty in the organization. I think that people are really upfront with sort of their intentions and what's going on and where we want the company to be and our goals and things like that. And I think that that's different. And again, it could just be the individuals that I'm working with, but I really feel like it's more than that. And I'll tell you, to your point about mentors and sponsors, the woman who is our founder and CEO, definitely was my sponsor at an old job. And really the first big chance I got was when she went on maternity leave. And I said, well, okay, who's going to be my interim boss? And she was like, oh, no, you're the interim boss. And that was the biggest, minus the YMCA gymnastics instruction, that was my biggest break, I guess, in leadership. And I think, when she started Framebridge, I was the first person she hired. And so really, she has brought me along on her ride. And I think it's amazing. And I hope that I can do that for other people, too, someday.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm actually in the same boat. We are a women-focused, women-centric company, obviously, so it's a great thing.
I'll just add one thing, mentoring.
Just add a few years ago, I was at a women-centric event like this, and senior leader, I believe she was a CMO of Pepsi at the time, Wendy Clark, said a phrase which she probably didn't come up with, but which I remember her saying, which is lift as you climb. And I try and keep that phrase with me all the time. So my recommendation to those who want to take advantage of someone else's either sponsorship or mentorship or leadership is be specific in your ask. Very, very rarely will I say no if someone approaches me, and I work at Google. People call me all the time saying, oh, we went to the same college, can I ask you about Google, or we have some connection. If the ask is specific, it's pretty hard to say no unless I'm just really not the right fit for that. You know, if I don't know someone, I can't introduce them, but if the ask is, someone, for example, called me the other day and said, hey, she's a senior at the college that I went to, Georgetown. She wrote a paper and she would like me to find someone at Google that might be interested in reading this paper that's topical because it's about YouTube. And I was like, that's pretty specific. Can I do it today? Probably not, but like I can put that on my to-do list. So that's my one recommendation about taking advantage of all these good intentions up here and from leaders is think about what you want, put it out into the universe, but be specific about it. Don't ask someone, hey, can you help me, you know, get a new job or a new career? Yeah.
We actually interviewed someone the other day on our site, and she had a great quote. She said, send the ladder back down. And you guys can go read her interview. She's fantastic. And she's the most recent interview. So I just thought that was a really great mindset that she has is, you know, we are sort of all climbing this ladder together, send it back down. And I also think one of the other things that we can do is to help other women is be careful about the way we speak about each other when we're in the room, not in the room. You know, they want us to use the words like we're catty, we don't like each other, we're gonna stab each other in the back. Like, let's all be really positive about each other. And also, I know the White House, Obama's White House coined the term amplification, where a woman in a meeting would say, you know, this is my idea, and then another woman would repeat it to say, oh, so-and-so, that's such a great idea to do X, Y, Z. And the point was is that then nobody else could take credit for her work other than what she was doing. And I think that's really fantastic. So what we say about each other and then lifting each other up, not just in, you know, those moments of promotion, but all the time in every meeting, things like that.
You're saying the Trump White House didn't come up with that.
The only other thing I would add to that, and that's all so right, is don't underestimate, like if you have a colleague and you see her maybe doing things where she is getting in her own way, the other thing that you can do to lift someone up is just like take them aside and say, like, can I be helpful to you on this? You know, one observation that I had was maybe you might want to approach this issue differently. Like, I do think there's a lot to being able to help people through making blind spots clear that I think men are oftentimes more comfortable doing, that I would just encourage all of us to do.
Thank you. I love this teamwork. Everyone's helping with the microphone. So we actually I want to wind down on a bit of a fun question, and then I'm going to turn the questions over to the audience because I hope that several of you have some good questions. I'm sure you do. So we're in Trunk Club's clubhouse tonight, surrounded by beautiful fashion. So inevitably the question comes to mind of a power outfit and whether you have one. So, for example, I was leaving the house tonight that we're staying in, and Jack, my coworker, pointed out that I didn't have any red lipstick on, and she was sort of scandalized by that, and she's right. I put on red lipstick. I've written an article about what that means, and that's my confidence boost. We've even had a woman at our Trunk Club Chicago event who only wears a red heel when she goes to any speaking events. And then there are rituals as well, right? I'm sure some of you listen to the same song, or you have a catchphrase that you say to yourself. So I'm curious, do any of you have a power outfit or a particular ritual that you do to feel confident before you, I don't know, walk onto a panel where there's no working microphones?
I feel guilty saying this right now, considering the state of my head with the weather. But whenever I travel and go to a pitch or a meeting, I feel like there's a lot of power in a blowout.
Yes.
And so my colleague and I were even joking about this today, that like I feel like the last year has been a dry bar tour of America for us. So I think, and it's something about that really is also like taking a few minutes for yourself to just sit there and think, and that's probably more about what's good about it, I think.
For me, I thought the question was very interesting because it kind of reverted me back to undergrad. I went to Howard University, and if anyone is familiar with Howard and the School of Business, you are required to wear a navy blue suit when you are attending some of your freshman classes, and it used to kill us. Like, there was no expressing who you were. So I was so excited once I got into the workplace, and I understood what they were trying to tell me about making sure I can assimilate and not to distract people, let them see your work ethic, not necessarily your personality first, because some people are just turned off by that, and it's really unfortunate. But I say that to say, for me, it's black suit, black pantsuit, but I always put a pop of color somewhere. If it's not my lipstick, it's my shoes, it's the scarf, it's something, because that's still my personality. But at the same time, I'm just being mindful of, I'm not quite sure the culture just yet, or I'm not quite sure how this individual may interpret. So I do stick with the black, but somewhere, somehow, you're gonna see a little bit of my personality come out.
So I walked in here and there's this woman at the desk rocking this pink short jumpsuit, like suit, and I was thinking she should feel powerful. I wish that I could pull that off. She looked amazing. So I need to get my style game up, is what I would say. So maybe I should be a client of Trunk Club. But I would say, like, generally, I listen to really, like, maybe slightly inappropriate music before I'm having to do any presentations. I kind of get my energy that way. And then I'm 5'10", but we'll always have 2-inch or 3-inch heels on, and so that helps too.
I always wear dresses, always to work. Maybe occasionally if it's like horribly, horribly cold, or if I'm feeling really sick, I'll throw on some jeans, but just in general, I have accepted part of my identity is I feel better in a dress, so I just go with it.
So my new thing is dresses, but dresses with pockets. I don't know what to do with my hands, and our photographer, Katharina, and I talk about this all the time, and I was like, every dress I brought here has pockets. I wore a skirt yesterday with pockets. So that's my new thing is if I'm gonna go somewhere, especially like a networking event where I don't know a bunch of people, I get really awkward with what I'm supposed to do with my hands. So pockets, guys, that's my new solution.
All right, so that's a great note to sort of end on. I want to turn the questions over to you in the audience, and again, it'll probably mean a little bit of like speaking from your gut in literal and figurative form. So does anyone have a question for our audience or one of our panelists, or our panelists, I should say?
Yeah.
Polka dots.
Thank you all for being here. I have a question about managing individuals who are very early on in their career. So I was tapped as the intern coordinator at my firm for the summer. That's 10 interns that I will be helping oversee. So do you have any tips and tricks about managing people who are at the earliest stages of their career? I myself am not that far into my career, but have yet to manage people so early on. So would appreciate any advice on that.
Where do you work really quickly?
I work at Epshteyn Consulting. It's a large consulting firm. I work in public affairs and government relations.
Okay, so early experienced or inexperienced employees and leadership.
Sure. So that's our whole firm. About 60% of our employees have less than 3 years of professional work experience. Yes, wow. I love, that's awesome, because they are so hungry for any little drop of knowledge you can give them, and so, take that really seriously. I think it's just like demystifying what it's like to work in a professional environment, and then just being really clear with what your expectations are. And don't assume that if they aren't getting them right, it's like that they don't have the will to. Like, oftentimes it's just they are trying to figure this all out. So just like lead with empathy for that group, and just kind of keep them really tucked close to you. They'll do great. You'll do great.
Thank you.
I will say this is different but the same. I have a 2-year-old at home, and so I've been reading a lot of books about how to communicate and how to like deal with toddlers. And the one thing that a lot of these books do say, there's like 2 main tenets, which is 1, affirm or acknowledge their feelings. So like, if someone comes into work and they're struggling, they're having a hard day, just having some empathy for that was good. But also setting boundaries. People like rules, like young people too, like 2-year-olds, but also young professionals. So be clear about it. I would say on day 1, guys, we're gonna have so much fun this summer, but then list out like the 3 ground rules that you have, like, and as long as everyone is good with A, B, and C, we're gonna have a blast. But set out a couple of rules to also establish yourself as like the boss.
Next question.
Can I just add real quickly? One thing that I've experienced is working in conservative industries is now we're finding with diversity that it's beyond just ethnicity, it's also generational. So I would say one thing that I noticed, and I try to guide some of my mentees, is you're a millennial, be mindful that you're working with Xers and boomers. So you pulling out your phone in a meeting and you're taking notes, and I know you're taking notes, but that boomer that's at the end of the table thinks that you're being disrespectful, rude, and not paying attention. So a lot of it is making sure they understand the culture and also knowing who else, I don't want to say know your audience, but just be mindful of how other people may take things. Because, again, I get it. I'm a millennial, but I get it. But there are some boomers that I've had to coach. John, he's not being disrespectful. He's actually taking notes to what you're saying. So that's something for millennials to be mindful of.
Of course. Keep on going.
At my first job, I didn't know how to send an email, and I didn't know what the word per meant. P-E-R. Where you say per yesterday's email. And I just remember that I was so embarrassed and I didn't know what was going on. And if it weren't for somebody telling me, literally, this is how you make a PowerPoint, this is Excel, you need to learn everything about Excel, I just don't think I would have learned that stuff. So someone early on had to tell me stuff that now I can't believe I didn't know.
I didn't know what OOO meant. I remember Googling it. So I think we can do another couple of questions. Does anyone else have? Yeah, right here in the front.
Hi, I'm Lucretia Fikes. I'm a project manager currently. And my question is, I guess for any of you, I am considering kind of shifting gears in my career completely. I'm not very new in my career, but I'm pretty new in my career. So seeing as how I have a couple of years behind me, how do you kind of let go of the experiences you already have to move into a different field?
Yeah, so I'm going to reiterate for anyone who couldn't hear in the back, this question's about career transitions and the idea of moving from one career to another with a little bit of experience, but not a lot of experience. Is that accurate? And how do you know how to kind of make that shift? So
I can start with this one. So going from corporate to nonprofit, complete transition for me. There's so much that I'm taking from my corporate experience, and in all honesty, my CEO hired me because of my corporate experience and bringing that into nonprofit. And I tell anyone, even that job that you absolutely can't stand, there is something that you did in that role that you can take with you to that dream job that you're looking for. So be mindful of that, because I'm assuming that you're going into this different area, but there's something that you did in that previous role that can help you get into that area, and just kind of keep hold of that as you're going through your career, because it's really a journey. There's really no destination, and I'm finding that out as I get older. I wanted to be at this role, I wanted to go in this direction, and it's a journey. So you have to be mindful to not completely let go of everything that you've done in that past role.
You're better qualified for any new job right now because of what you've done before.
I know I'm the moderator, but just so you know, I was working in project management full time when I took the job at Career Contessa, and I hated project management, so apologies to anyone who loved it, but I kind of fell into it because I was really good at it. I think we actually mentioned this earlier. I was really good at managing clients or herding cats or whatever you want to call it, and getting projects in on time. And when I was there, I was writing on the side, and I've been writing my whole life. But I would always sort of end up doing writing projects because people would find out that I could write. But that was my real passion. And I made a decision to kind of move on and go to Career Contessa, and I really pitched myself with this experience and this background, and Lauren took a chance on me, which I'm really grateful that she did. But what I will say is, we were just talking about this today, project management is a huge part of my job. And I don't just mean like dealing with the rest of the team, which I think is really great. I'm incredible at writing very good emails when I'm responding to clients. But even now I'm project managing with our sponsored projects. So when we do things like articles that are sponsored by brands like Squarespace, half of that is sort of corresponding with the client and doing what works for us and makes great quality work, but also works for them. So I just would say that like I never thought in a million years that I was going to go into an editorial position and find myself doing project management again. And while it's not my favorite thing, there's something to be said for having a skill and using it in a position that you love versus a position that you're not maybe in love with. So I think it's a great thing to kind of keep in mind as well. So that was just kind of a little addendum. Is there another question in the audience? Yeah.
You're good. Good evening. What is some advice you can give for starting in the morning in regards to making sure that you're very productive, or habits that you've created that help you to make sure that your days are very productive, that you actually get most off of your to-do list?
Yeah, so for everyone in the back, morning routines and productivity. No worries. Does anyone have a good answer?
Well, I wake up at 5, I go to the gym. No. So I love this question. I listen to a lot of podcasts on this, like life hacks. What do you do to like maximize your productivity? I am not a morning person, so I don't necessarily try to be. I mean, I have to get to work by 8:30 or 9, but so I try to map like when my natural energy spikes. That's when I get my important tasks done. And for me, it's like a weird time, like 2 to 7 p.m. is when I'm the most productive, which is counter to most people. So I would just figure out like a system that works for you and not worry about it being like officially like the folks that are like really got their lists. The other thing I would say that I have done that I think works well is setting up your meeting, if you work in a corporate environment, setting up your meeting cadence to help you get important things done. So like whether it's a project, starting from the end, working back, what are the 3 milestones I need to get to by when, like just using your time blocking for things that really do need white space, managing your calendar maybe in 45-minute increments so that you're not running over to your next meeting, so you can collect your thoughts and move on. You might have, someone may have other ideas.
Those are such wonderful ideas. I would just add, if you find that you are chronically late in the morning, which is actually not my problem, but I've noticed is my husband's, which is asking yourself why. Like, nothing is an accident. If you're procrastinating, there's something that you're trying to put off. And so I would just suggest, this is really, I haven't perfected the morning either, but I'm just saying it can be helpful to look inside and try and figure out why you're procrastinating or why you're not getting out of bed. Is there a reason? And just acknowledging it could be enough to help you move past it.
I was just gonna say, you don't have to be a morning person. Like I work late at night. It's not probably great for a lot of people, but that's when I'm by myself, and this is when I can actually get like work done, and it's made me a lot more productive to just accept that.
So I think that's a great note to end on, accepting oneself, including your routines. So will you all join me in thanking our panelists this evening? Thank you so much, ladies. Fantastic, and everyone stayed in their seats, which I love so much. Thank you for that. So I'm going to introduce you to the next portion of the evening, which is the curated networking portion of the evening. It's on your little card. That being said, there's going to be an opportunity to get your LinkedIn headshots after this curated